Okay, so it is currently the 21st of July, and we are at the end of my 2-week vacation, in which I tried to detach as much as possible from Wi-Fi, from media, from the internet, and did quite a bit of writing on Tharr and stuff. So I hope you enjoy an update on everything I've written, while I intermix some shots of the website I tried to build along with shots of my cat. What I mainly went about writing the last 2 weeks is Tharr, and Tharr is the new name for what I've been calling the Split Village until now. It is a village of about roughly 24 houses, all built around a river that only runs for about 4 months a year. Within the center of it, the Shepherd's Well, kind of functioning as a large townhouse and makeshift tavern of sorts, where all in the village can kind of just come in and make use of its amenities. It is not a capitalistic idea, it is not a tavern you go to pay for anything or to buy services. It is just a space for the whole village to use, although it is run by some people. Mainly, it is run by Irith and Ahaish. They're a couple living in the top floor of the Shepherd's Well, where Ahaish is a lumberjack supplying a lot of the firewood for the village, and Irith, in a sense, runs the Shepherd's Well. She keeps it stocked on food, she accepts and takes in all the kind of supplies that get dropped off there, and does kind of make a lot of the food, taps a lot of the drinks, and runs it for a good part like a tavern, but out of goodwill and not as a job, I suppose. The way the village kind of functions is that all families do, for a good part, live and supply themselves. They hunt, they forage for food, and during the dry, fertile season, when the river's not running, they make use of the riverbed to get a good harvest. And whatever people use themselves, they just use themselves, and whatever they have left over often gets brought to the Shepherd's Well, and it's a place where the elderly can go if they don't have the food on hand to eat that night. It's a place where, you can see on the bottom right, I think, it's a place where unused stuff can get dropped off, whether that is tools or clothing or blankets. Anything that had labor put into it, they drop off to be reused. We're not throwing away something that, our time and energy went into. I guess that we are just jumping into the places of Tharr, and the first one is the Shepherd's Well. I think it's the main one that I was really interested in writing. What I currently have open is a TiddlyWiki. It is a way kind of similar to things like Obsidian for note-taking and such. I am currently in the process of turning this TiddlyWiki into a proper website so it can be viewed outside of where I work in it as well. In it, I have quite a bit of Shepherd's Well worked out, though it's not as detailed as I want it to be. It is pretty good. So let's just run through it real quick. This drawing is not completely finished, but I wanted to have something uploaded. The numbers were added in post via Paint, but this is hand drawn, which is something that I want to continue through with for the rest of the website. So we have as number 1 the kitchen, something that mainly Irith and Ahaish use, as well as the kids running around. They have 3 kids running around. To make a lot of the food, most of what they make is large roasted animals, is stews, is, things they can kind of prepare in bulk. People can just kind of take. Has a little pantry at the end for keeping bulk supplies that people in the village might not need anymore. The pantry mostly stores stuff that aren't out in the food pits. The food pits are little wells dug outside, mostly around the tavern, as there's a lot of open space there. And they are little 5-foot deep wells dug into the ground where during warmer times it fills with cold groundwater, and during colder times it fills with a layer of ice to keep them from rotting, from vermin, keep them away from little kids, anything that shouldn't be getting into it. They are covered with these heavy wooden lids to make sure that large animals walking around can't just get into them. However, stuff that might be pickled, prepared, vegetables, can go in the pantry inside of the Shepherd's Well, because that's even more protected. It has a wall around it. Then there is a main hall, a space filled and set up with tables. People can just come in and relax. A little stage, mainly for the kids to play around, for music nights, for the once a year ceremony we'll get into later. You know, like a multi-purpose little space, but often just used by local kids running around and playing Defend the Castle or something. I'm still trying to figure out some games they might play. I'm trying to avoid palette swapping, where I take things like chess and just make it a fantasy version. I'm really trying to write from the ground up. So I'm trying to figure out little games that they might play inside here. This is a space for the whole of the village to visit, but often it is occupied with Irith and Ahaish and the kids, their direct family, and then mostly a lot of the elderly that might not have the space or the capacity to cook for themselves, hunt, gather food, etc. And they can freely come in here, whether it is just for dinner every once in a while to catch a break, or whether it's for 3 meals a day, or just for company. Aside from the main hall, we have a public pantry, at least that's what I've called it so far. It is a space for people to drop off blankets, tools, clothing, anything that they don't use for themselves anymore, but don't want to throw out. This village lives quite high up in the snowy mountains, not above the tree line, but still up in a harsh environment, and everything that you put time and labor and energy into, you're not going to throw it away. So Irith and Ahaish actually remodeled the Shepherd's Well from just an open space people walked into a more kind of functioning tavern-esque style of space, I suppose. And with it, they remodeled a lot of the upstairs, the second floor, which in this image is on the left. I should probably switch that around. We'll do that later. The second floor you can see on the left, where they made space for themselves, you know, a bedroom, the bedrooms for the kids, a living room, place to stockpile things like pine sap cider. With that, the second floor became not just a space for the village to dump things they weren't using, it became the lived-in space. Then actually going to the upstairs, we have quite a few spaces and not that exciting. Number 4 is a master bedroom where Irith and Ahaish sleep and vibe. Number 5 is the 3 bedrooms of the kids. There are 3 children that were dropped off at the village years ago by a traveler kind of in the night stumbling by, saying that he couldn't take care of them anymore. At the time they were roughly 6 or 7 years of age. By now they are 10-ish. And Irith took them in. This was before getting together with Ahaish, but she wholeheartedly took them in as well, and now they all live upstairs. Number 6 is a little storage room. It is for kind of stuff that shouldn't be in the public pantry. It's more so actually longer term storage. It keeps their firewood, but also it keeps pine cider barrels, seasonal seeds and tools, you know, things you're not going to be using for the whole of the year. Next to it we have a little living room for them, something that Irith and Ahaish didn't really need until they had the kids around, and it was just more peaceful for everyone in the Shepherd's Well involved to have a little space for them as a little family to exist. And then number 8 is just a little balcony. One that used to be a lot smaller, but when they built out the public pantry kind of attached to the Shepherd's Well, they were able to use that roof as a little balcony too. I think it's cute. I think it works well. So that's the Shepherd's Well. Talking longer than I thought I would. In this building mainly lives Irith and Ahaish and their 3 children, Ir, Hai, and Ish. As you notice, those 3 names are a cut-up version of their parents' name. Tharr is a village living in very close proximity to and in harmony with the wind spirits around them. That's where they get their magic from. They get their magic from communicating with, or at least mimicking, the speech of these wind spirits. We'll get to how they do their shrines and their magic a little bit later, but one of the practices they've picked up, because they so highly value the wind spirits and their way of being and their magic, they have taken that into their daily life. And one of the ways they've done that is through their naming practices. They believe that your kid's name should be a part of your own, so you both kind of respond to the same sound of wind, if that makes sense, because they are just a part of yourself. And with that, they believe that as you age and as you become older, there will be a point where the wind will tell you your name. Like, for example, a name like Ish can turn into Avisha, something that the wind might whisper to you on a late night, or something you might hear out in the echo of a cavern. They believe that the wind, as you become older and are able to transition into more not necessarily adult life by our standards, but more so adult life in the sense of getting more of your own identity, kind of puberty-esque. The wind will give you a new name to answer to, and it will still always have part of your old name and your parents' name, but it also holds your own significance. Usually people will kind of hear that name come back before they actually understand and take it as their own. You don't just hear Avisha the first time and go, that's my name now. But more often it's just you hear it here and there in the rustling of the wind and the whispering of the fire and the echo of a cave. And it becomes your name through that way. And that is a naming practice that exists throughout all of the village, which is also why all of their names have a lot of this breathy quality. You have Irith and Ahaish and Ogos and Rusha. They're all names you could hear if you were out by the reeds next to a river and listening to the rustling of the wind. That is actually what started this like snowball finishing this village, was this thought of what if you have a village with a naming practice where the child has part of their parents' name, and then that turned into a vocal system where I just crossed out letters of the alphabet. That's where I started, at least, that I don't think wind would be able to replicate, and went from there. I hope that makes sense, which might actually be a good moment to continue on into the Shrines of Tharr, which I am going to get into in the next video, just to be able to get this one out and not get too stuck on editing this video because it's been going on for a while. But I will be back to you with the rest of this soon, and thank you!